Then shoot straight on America. Happy birthday. Let's talk about it, y'all. Middle America. Well, this is a different type of Middle America than you've seen, but hey, it's America's birthday. What I'm about to list is the top 3 reasons as to why I am proud to be in America and why I still believe this is the greatest country on the planet. Now, the vast majority of the videos I've shot has some sort of critique or criticism for America, and in my mind and in my arithmetic, the people closest to us and the people that we love the most are also the people that we criticize the most, because we're able to see their flaws a lot more in clear relief than others, and vice versa. So I've said a lot of things about America, about our foreign policy, about how we treat people overseas, how we treat each other. That's negative, but really that's about trying to maintain a standard and an ideal for what we're supposed to attain to. So here are my top 3 reasons for why I love America. Number 3, the Civil War. So, slavery as an institution has been around as far back as human beings have been around. If you look at Hammurabi's code, there was codes about slavery. If you look at the Old Testament, there were slave codes. Slavery as an institution is something that is very common to the human experience. What is not common to the human experience, however, is a nation that is benefiting exorbitantly from slavery actually fighting to end it within itself at the cost of blood and money. And so when people say the Civil War wasn't about slavery, etc., etc., I think that, number one, that's a oversimplistic and ahistorical statement. It wasn't only about slavery, but slavery was a massive part of the Civil War as far as motivation goes on both sides. The Articles of Secession mention slavery over 50 times. So I will grant you that the Civil War wasn't only about slavery, but you cannot say that it had nothing to do with slavery. What I'm about to read to you is some excerpts from the diaries of some Union soldiers, as well as an excerpt from a book. And so let's start. The rebellion is abolitionizing the whole army. Abolitionizing means it's moving everybody to a radical state of abolition of slavery. There were multiple ideas about how to end slavery. There was sort of this piecemeal gradualist understanding, and then you had abolitionists like John Brown, for example, that were saying, no, we need a total and immediate and complete end and abolition of slavery. And most people were on the spectrum somewhere. And when the guys started in the war, people were kind of in the center, but as they went to the south and started interacting with slaves and things of that nature, it pushed them toward the abolitionist side. Time spent in the South has forced Union troops to face this sum of all evils and cause of the war. You have no idea of the changes that have taken place in the minds of the soldiers in the last 2 months. Men of all parties seem unanimous in the belief that to permanently establish a union is to first wipe out the institution of slavery. That was just a regular enlisted soldier. Through the rest of the war, soldiers dwelt increasingly on the explicitly moral necessity of destroying slavery, because it was so evil that it destroyed the moral health of the nation and angered God. As sure as God is God and right is right, so sure may we look for the war to end in the accomplishment of its glorious object, the liberation of this oppressed and downtrodden race, prophesied James Jesse. To doubt this would be to doubt God. In fact, Jesse claimed, I would prefer 10 years of war yet, and no more slavery, than peace tomorrow with slavery. Such is my abhorrence of that barbarous institution, end quote. more and more, from the rank and file to ranking officers, America and the Civil War was one of the few times you can count on your own hand in history where countrymen killed one another to end a institution that was benefiting them. At the height of the slave trade, you had America being the #1 exporter of cotton all over the world. So so what I'm saying is slavery is no anomaly in human history. As a matter of fact, slavery is still going on. The minute that the Arab Spring hit and Libya fell into hands of Al-Qaeda, they immediately opened a slave market for Africans. So this is not one of those things where we've progressed as humanity beyond the concept of slavery. We still have slavery, and then the sex trafficking industry is another form of slavery, according to the U.S. State Department. So slavery continues to this day. Slavery is the default of human nature. As being a Christian, I believe that all men are sinners, and so this is the default practice of human nature. So the fact that the United States partook of the slave trade is not an anomaly. What is an anomaly in history, though, and you'll be hard-pressed to find it, find me another time when people began to be more and more convinced that slavery was an abhorrence to God himself, and that the very soul of the nation was being held in the balance based on the outcome of a war to end slavery. So much so that the song, the Battle Hymn of the Republic, Glory, Glory, Hallelujah, that was about the Civil War. One of the lines in the original song, it was written in 1861, it actually reads this way: "As he died to make men holy, let us die to make men free." That was the original line. So they were connecting Jesus' death on the cross to save us from our sins. They were connecting a Union soldier's death on the battleground to save those enslaved for freedom. So they were willing, they literally give up their lives for the freedom of other people. They thought that this was a spiritual battle ultimately. So I love America because, look, slavery is the human story. And quite frankly, I've said on a bunch of occasions in this forum that we are the original man, meaning Africa, and that means slavery began in Africa. That's what that means. Slavery began in Africa. We invented it. You can't have it both ways, fellas. If you want to take credit for the pyramids, then you also have to take credit for the invention, the institution of slavery. And so, anyway, I spent too long on that point. Reason number one, I love America because of the Civil War. Because this is an anomaly in human history and in the human story. And obviously the influence of Christianity, obviously I think had a lot to do, well, I mean, it's obvious that Christianity had a lot to do with it on both sides. The number two reason I love this country. I'm a guy that barely graduated high school. It took me 5 years to graduate high school. And I've literally been all over the world. And I've had amazing opportunities, both experientially and career-wise and whatever. And yup, I worked my tail off for it, and in every thing that I've done, I've worked twice as hard as everybody else to earn my spot, and then to keep my spot, absolutely. But, now I'm looking at this through the lens of the entirety of human history now. The ability to do that is not something we should take for granted, because it is very recent in the history of human beings that a person like me, who's an immigrant, who doesn't have much education, doesn't have much of the social structure angled towards my benefit, you'll be hard pressed to go over the story of the world now. Because again, a lot of us are looking at the concept of justice through the lens of modern Western understandings of justice that we've learned over time. But I'm talking about the story of the world since the inception of human beings, from cuneiform to English. And it is without question that I am an anomaly. the ability that I've had to do amazing things around the world, and the ability to do what I'm doing now. It was an American company that figured out a way to give everybody a platform to speak their mind and say whatever they want to say. And that's why when people say, are you mad at YouTube for demonetizing you and things like that? No. So you could be some kid in your room, and you, because of American ingenuity and things of that nature, you can reach literally 1 million people with your political musings, and you have no such qualifications. And so I just think that's one of those things where America has really been a thought leader in the world in that regard. And that's just something you do not see in human history. It doesn't happen, and I'm very grateful that I'm part of this country. So that's number 2. Number 1, the fact that if you don't like Donald Trump, you get to come out and call him the orange one. You can call him whatever name you want. You can even say that you're not necessarily sad that if he were to die, and you don't get disappeared overnight. The ability to speak against leadership, the ability for CNN to constantly attack this man, the ability for Fox News to be able to constantly to attack Obama, the ability for us to attack the Clintons, and nobody's afraid of getting disappeared at night. Nobody's afraid of being assassinated. That is another anomaly in human history. A lot of Americans assume that pretty much everybody in the Western world has freedom of speech to the degree that we do. That's not true. That's not true. America is, this is going to be controversial, but America is the freest place on the planet as far as speech goes in relationship to the government. North Korea, think about that. China controls the internet. There's just a lot of places where you don't have the ability to criticize your government. Now, again, in the Western world, we've all come around to that basically, but America was really the innovators of that doctrine to the degree that you could come out and publicly say things against your government and speak freely. And we all know, and our friends, our liberal friends teach us that you can have free speech, but you can't have speech without consequences. Absolutely, and people can hold you accountable in various ways. But the fact of the matter still stands that in most countries across the world, and I'm not going to name them, but I've been to other countries that are supposedly democratic or supposedly very civilized, you have to be very, very careful about who you speak to and who you're speaking about. And in America, you are able to criticize your government, and you're able to criticize the police department and things of that nature. And I think that that's very, very important, and that's why I'm very, very hopeful for our nation. You know, as Jordan Peterson says, the more you say things out in the open, in the public square, the better chance you have as a nation to get good ideas and leave bad ideas behind. Because the more people talk in the public square, the more you're able to see, hey, this is a good idea, this is a bad idea. And so when people talk about erasing history is a massive concern for me. Obviously, history is not located in a statue or a monument. History is located in the written word. And I think if more Americans would read up on our history, we would be able to see the pattern of what's actually happening, because there's a lot of things that are just recycling certain motifs and ideas. So the ability to criticize your government, I think, is a massively important thing, and I know that America is not the only country where that's the case, but I do believe America is the country with the freest speech in the world. Here's the last thing, this is a bonus. Americans are generous. Americans have been the most giving country on the planet Earth for the last decade, okay? Americans have been the most generous people on the planet for the last decade. And I'm not talking about the government, saying we're gonna give X amount of money of aid to this country or not. I'm talking about regular American citizens being generous. That we are the number one most generous country on the face of the earth. And this particular report I'm actually referring to is was based in the UK, so it was not an American institution that said this. And I'm proud of that. I'm proud of the fact that your regular normal American citizen, in spite of the massive wage gaps and injustices that are happening economically speaking, your average American citizen is one of the most generous human beings on the face of the earth. And so, it's very in vogue to criticize Americans as being completely cloistered or whatever. I think the American citizens gave away about $42 billion last year in charitable giving. So, anyway, anytime you say something like this, people are always going to say, "But what about?" And look at the channel. The channel is full of criticisms of the country, but America has massive redeeming qualities, and if we can hold on to those things and leave the other things behind, we're going to be good. All right, guys. So there you go. So there we are. It's like your kids. Full of flaws, and the flaws of your kids more than anybody else. But at the end of the day, they're your kids, and you love them, and you're gonna ride with them. And this is my country, and I love it, and above all other countries, and I'm gonna ride with it. So there you go. Love your neighbor. Take care of each other. Middle America. We are the media. Till next time, guys. God bless America.